Hi, I'm Krin. My mother told me not to get married on my brother's birthday because that day already belongs to the family. Then she canceled my wedding venue behind my back and sent a birthday cake to my ceremony with a note that said, "Hope you're enjoying your little show." But maybe what broke me more than her silence was realizing how long she'd been planning my failure. How many people helped her erase me, frame by frame, memory by memory? What kind of mother does that? And why did no one stop her? The spring light in Boise has a way of making even cracked sidewalks look poetic. I remember standing on my porch that morning, the air still crisp, the tulips just beginning to stretch open as if the earth had decided to sigh in color. Everything looked like possibility. I had a date circled on my calendar, April 15th. I chose it because it was far enough into spring to be warm, but not so far that the wildflowers faded. That was the day I was going to become someone's wife, not just anyone's, but his. And I wanted everything simple, small ceremony, good food, people who mattered. It wasn't about the dress or the venue or even the vows. It was about feeling like the center of something sacred, if only for a few hours. I grew up believing that weddings were about family, about a daughter finally stepping forward while her family stood behind her. I had held on to that image for decades, me in white, my mother teary but proud, my father steady as ever. And yet, even as I scribbled down names for the guest list, a tightness pulled at my chest. I kept wondering, would she find a reason to ruin this too? That afternoon, I went to see my mother, Justice. I'd called ahead, asked if I could come by and tell her something important. She said she had 30 minutes between errands. I told myself that was fine, I didn't need more. She was sitting in her usual spot by the kitchen window, one leg crossed over the other, flipping through a church bulletin. I took the seat across from her and smiled, nervous but determined. "I've set a date," I said, placing the folded note on the table like it was some sacred document. "April 15th. Justice looked up, her mouth curling just slightly before she put the paper down. "You picked the same day as your brother's birthday?" I blinked. "Oh, I didn't realize." "He's turning 30, she said, tone flat as a countertop. "That's not a day you just schedule over." I laughed, thinking maybe she was teasing. "He's a grown man. I thought it was just another Saturday." Her expression didn't shift. "This isn't about you, Krin. That day already belongs to the family." I felt something slide in my chest, like a drawer closing too hard. "Mom, it's just a wedding date. We can do something with him that morning, or—" Justice raised her hand, halting me mid-sentence. "If you go ahead with this, you'll go ahead alone." The silence that followed didn't last long, but it stretched like a shadow. "I've already put down deposits." "That's your choice," she said. And then she added something I'll never forget. "You'll understand one day, when you have a son." I didn't respond. I just stared at her. My fingers clenched the edge of the chair, but I stayed calm. The air in the room thickened. Her coffee sat between us, untouched. I stood up slowly, my voice even. "Thanks for your time." She didn't follow me. Didn't call out, just resumed flipping through her bulletin. Back home, I opened the group chat my family used for holidays, announcements, and the occasional passive-aggressive meme from Aunt Caroline. I wanted to say something, to maybe get ahead of whatever story Justice would start spinning, but I didn't have to. There it was. A message from her, time-stamped 5 minutes after I left. "Krin picked his birthday for her wedding. She knows. She's doing it anyway. No context. No nuance, just a scalpel disguised as a sentence." Responses trickled in almost immediately. "Yikes. Awkward." She always did love making things about herself. I sat there, eyes fixed on the screen, watching my own family build a narrative in real time. Not one person asked for my side. Not one. I hovered over the text bar, fingers aching to type something. Anything. But I didn't. Instead, I took a screenshot and closed the app. I stared at the photo on my desk, me and my brother blowing out candles at his 10th birthday. I was holding the cake, beaming. He got the credit. That had always been the pattern. And suddenly, a line from deep inside surfaced. I didn't realize I needed permission to matter. By the time the sun dipped below the edge of my backyard, I was curled up on the couch, phone pressed against my cheek. My fiancé, Mark, picked up on the second ring. "Hey," he said, his voice soft, knowing. "How'd it go?" I told him everything. The cold tone, the dismissal, the group chat. "Wow," he whispered. "We'll fix this. They'll come around." I shook my head, though he couldn't see. "No, I don't think they will. I think they already chose." I turned to look at the garment bag hanging near the closet door, the wedding dress I had picked out last month. It suddenly looked like it belonged to someone else, some other bride from some other family. "You can't plan a wedding alone," I murmured. Mark was silent on the other end, and yet, I might have to. After I hung up the phone with Mark, I sat in my kitchen and stared out the window. The sun had dipped far enough to cast long shadows across the countertop, bathing the room in that soft, late-afternoon gold that always made our worn-out cabinets look more charming than they really were. It should have been a beautiful day. A moment of joy. But all I could feel was the cold hum beneath my skin. The kind that follows a slap that never physically landed. I kept replaying her voice in my head. "If you go ahead, you'll go ahead alone." My mother's words weren't just dismissive. They were a verdict. Final, precise, clean, and cruel. It started sinking in slowly. I wasn't part of the plan. Not for the wedding. Not for the family. Not in the way I had hoped, prayed, or naively assumed. That realization didn't crush me. It clarified things. It was like fog lifting off a cold highway. A dangerous clarity, maybe, but clarity nonetheless. A quote from a book I read years ago drifted into my mind, uninvited but timely. "Family isn't always blood. It's who stands by you when the world walks away." I used to think those were just pretty words. Now I clung to them like truth. I had no intention of pleading for space at a table that had already struck my name from the place cards. 2 mornings later, I sat at my desk checking emails, mostly wedding-related invoices and updates I was no longer sure how to handle. One subject line caught my eye. "Deposit cancellation confirmed, Magnolia Ridge events." I opened it, blinking hard as I read the message. "We regret to confirm that your deposit has been canceled as requested by Justice Verdansky. Funds have been returned to the original card on file." For a second, I thought it had to be a mistake, maybe a system error, a clerical glitch, but as my fingers moved almost automatically to my banking app, that hope disappeared. There it was. The deposit. Gone. The account now short by over $3,000. The amount she'd promised to handle as her gift to me and Mark? Gone. I leaned back in the chair, gripping the armrests so tight I thought they might crack. 2 months ago, this same woman was talking about napkin colors and bridal flats. She was drawing diagrams of seating arrangements and saying things like, "Classy but modest, just how we do it." What changed? I picked up the phone and dialed her number. It rang once, then twice, and then she answered like she was reading the weather. "Krin." "I just got an email from Magnolia Ridge," I said slowly. "Did you cancel the deposit?" "You knew this was conditional," she replied. No warmth, no hesitation. "Conditional on what?" Her sigh made it feel like I was wasting her precious time. "On your cooperation. On not scheduling your wedding to compete with your brother's day." "I didn't know," she cut in. "You always know. You just choose not to care." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "So this is your way of punishing me?" "This is me choosing not to reward bad behavior. You're not a child anymore. Start acting like it." My voice trembled, but I didn't let it crack. "I'll figure it out." Without you. Her response was silence, then the click of the line going dead. Later that night, Mark came over. I told him everything. He offered to cover the cost, without hesitation, but I declined. I wouldn't let this become a game of replacement. I didn't want my independence to feel like a bailout. I needed to own it. If I have to scale it down, I will, I told him. But this wedding, whatever it becomes, it will be mine. That evening, I was scrolling through Facebook trying to distract myself when I saw it. A post from Justice, a long, glowing caption with a photo of the family at dinner. "So proud of our family traditions," it read. There they were, my father, my brother, cousins, aunts, gathered around a long table at a restaurant I wasn't invited to. Everyone looked dressed up, celebratory. My brother sat at the center, holding a cake. I zoomed in, no empty chair for me, no mention, no tag, just a celebration. Comments had already started pouring in. Beautiful family. Love seeing everyone together. One caught my eye. Where's Krin? I recognized the name. It was a friend of mine from college. A good person. The comment disappeared 10 minutes later. I checked again. Gone. I refreshed the page. 2 more comments vanished. I wasn't surprised. Just tired. It wasn't passive aggression anymore. It was image warfare. Justice wasn't just ignoring me. She was erasing me frame by frame. I hovered over the comment bar, started typing. Something about truth, about facades, about masks people wear in daylight. But then I deleted it. Not yet. This wasn't the time to fight in public. This wasn't a war I was going to win with Facebook posts and emoji reactions. Sometimes the loudest betrayal is the one that smiles for the camera. I shut the laptop, got up, and poured myself a glass of wine. Red, dry, sharp, just how I liked it. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink for long. Instead, I opened my notebook, the one I kept for sketching out plans, ideas, thoughts. On the first clean page, I wrote, Plan B, the wedding they can't touch. Then I flipped back to the last page and taped 2 things, a screenshot of the Facebook post and a printout of the cancellation email. Not for revenge, for the record. That evening, I sat cross-legged on the living room rug with a photo album in my lap, the room lit only by the soft amber glow from my table lamp. There was something almost ceremonial about flipping through old pictures when your present feels too loud. I wasn't looking for comfort. I was looking for a reason, a thread, something to prove this wasn't all in my head. The first few pages were innocent enough, me as a toddler on a swing, my brother grinning with a cake in his hands, our dog Daisy licking ice cream off someone's shoe. But as I turned page after page, something began to nag at me. The photos always told the same story. Him front and center, me somewhere in the corner, if at all. I stared at one shot in particular. A Christmas morning, wrapping paper everywhere. He's unboxing a new gaming console. I'm behind him, out of focus, blurry, like the camera forgot I existed. A thought crept in that I didn't want to admit, but couldn't ignore. When people leave you out enough times, you stop asking why and start wondering what's wrong with you. I closed the album and leaned back against the couch. My head throbbed with the weight of memories that didn't belong to me. I kept thinking of the things that had gone missing over the years, drawings I made in school that never made it to the fridge, certificates for perfect attendance that somehow never got framed like his soccer ribbons, birthday parties where the cake was late or the guests fewer than promised. Every compliment from a teacher was met with, "Well, your brother just won the regional spelling bee," as if I was always just one step behind. Not quite enough. My therapist once told me, patterns are stories we live inside, and sometimes it's time to write a new ending. At the time, I had nodded, thinking it was profound but vague. Now I knew exactly what she meant. I picked up my phone and scrolled through old contacts until I found one I hadn't touched in years. Ava, my cousin. We used to be close until she just vanished. Or maybe she was pushed out, like me. It took her 2 rings to answer. Krin? Hey, do you have a minute? Honestly, I've been waiting for this call since your mom blew up at you last Christmas. We talked for nearly an hour. I told her everything. Justice canceling the venue, the deposit, the group chat betrayal. Ava was quiet until I mentioned the birthday date. She did that to me too, Ava said flatly. Years ago. What do you mean? I got engaged when I was 28. We planned a backyard wedding at Uncle Ray's. Remember that place? Right after I sent the invites, your mom called me and said she didn't approve of my fiancé, said he wasn't right for the family. Then she called my dad, then my sister. One by one, people started backing out. Said they didn't want to get in the middle. What happened? I canceled. I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought maybe she was looking out for me. I didn't speak. The line buzzed with quiet. She cut me off after that. No invites to Thanksgiving, no group messages. I became the unstable one. Just like that. It was like listening to a recording of my own life, but with someone else's voice. I thought I was special in being rejected, I whispered. Turns out, I was just next. Justice doesn't love people. She manages them, Ava said. The second you stop cooperating, she erases you. I hung up an hour later and just sat there, letting the truth sink its teeth in. My mother's love had always come with terms and expiration dates. Loyalty, for her, was never about presents. It was about obedience. I wasn't being punished for a date. I was being removed from the narrative. At midnight, I found myself digging through a dusty box under my bed, the kind filled with old DVDs and USB drives labeled in my dad's blocky handwriting. I was searching for something I hadn't thought about in years, my 10th birthday video. I remembered it so clearly, singing into a toy microphone, my brother doing a goofy dance beside me, my grandparents clapping along. It was the last time I remembered feeling like I belonged in the spotlight. I needed that video. Proof I hadn't made it all up. I found the disc labeled Krin, 10th bidet. I slipped it into the old player, heart thumping. The screen lit up. A few blurry minutes of a cake being cut, my brother grabbing the knife, my dad talking over the noise. Then, it cut. No song. No me. Just static. I grabbed another disc. Family Parties, 2005. Again, he was there. Everyone was. But whenever I entered the frame, the camera shifted. Away. Cropped. Blurred. I searched through the digitized versions on my external drive, files my father had once lovingly organized into folders. No Krin, just Aaron's graduation, family picnic, Dad's retirement. I sat back, breath caught in my chest. You don't just disappear overnight. It starts with little edits, fragments shaved off until there's nothing left to miss. I called my father. He answered groggily. Krin? Everything okay? Do you remember my 10th birthday video? A pause. Vaguely. I think the footage was corrupted. Technology, you know? I didn't answer right away. Just let the silence stretch. Well, he added, I'm sure it's around somewhere. Yeah, I said finally. Maybe. I ended the call, opened my contacts list, and quietly removed his name from my emergency list. After a few moments, I stood up, grabbed my laptop, and created a new folder on the desktop. I called it My Real Story. Inside, I scanned the only surviving drawing from my childhood, me with a crooked crown, holding hands with a faceless family. Underneath, I digitally signed it. Ilana, age 7, still here. Saturday morning, the first ping from my phone came in before I'd even wiped the sleep from my eyes. By the 5th notification, I was already dreading what I'd see. It was a flood. Instagram stories, tagged posts, photos all taken at a local brewery downtown. Balloons, a custom cake, laughter under warm lighting. My brother's 30th birthday was in full swing. I sat up slowly, pulling the blanket tighter around my shoulders. There was Mom, standing beside him, raising a glass mid-toast. My father behind them. My Aunt Caroline with her signature red lipstick. People who'd RSVP'd to my wedding as maybe were there too. Faces I recognized, smiling like they'd just won the lottery. And me? Not a single text, call, or even the courtesy of a fabricated excuse. I hadn't even known there was a party. As I scrolled, something twisted deep in my chest. This wasn't last minute. This was planned, coordinated, paid for and catered and decorated well before I had announced my wedding date. And yet, Justice still looked me in the eye and said I had scheduled over my brother's day. The lie hadn't just been told, it had been rehearsed. It was never about the date. It was about me having the audacity to matter, to claim something for myself without first asking who it might inconvenience. I tapped one video. It was shaky footage from someone's phone, but the audio was clear. To the heart of this family, my mother's voice rang out, glass lifted high. To the one who always puts others before himself. Applause, cheers. My brother laughing modestly as the camera turned toward the crowd, dozens of familiar faces nodding along, raising their glasses in agreement. I replayed the moment. Then I opened another video, this one from my own phone, sent days ago by my fiancé. My brother had sent him a birthday message during what was supposed to be our rehearsal dinner. "Hey, sis," he said, smirking. "No hard feelings. You know how Mom gets happy. Whatever." It wasn't the words that stung. It was the casual shrug, the knowing smirk, like I was the joke and he was letting me in on it out of pity. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my camera app, turned it toward myself, and hit record. "This is what erasure looks like," I said. "It's not someone yelling at you. It's silence when they speak over you. It's a room full of people who know better, pretending they don't." I watched myself say it, jaw tight, eyes dry, voice calm but cutting. Not for TikTok, not for clicks, just for me. I paused the video and took screenshots. My mother's toast, my brother's message, the guest list standing behind them. I saved them all into a folder titled Receipts. Not for revenge, for memory, for proof, for truth. The next morning, just as I was brewing coffee, my phone buzzed again. A new text from Justice. "Whatever you saw online," it read, "don't bring it up to anyone. Family matters stay in the family." I stared at the message. I reread it. Then I laughed, short, bitter. That sentence wasn't meant to keep the family together. It was meant to keep people like me quiet. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot, saved it to the same folder. Then I opened Instagram and posted a quote, black text on a white background. "Some families silence you not by muting your voice, but by flooding the room with noise that isn't yours." No hashtags, no names, just truth. A few minutes later, a comment popped up. From my old sociology professor. "Let me know when you're ready to be heard." I stared at the message. It wasn't dramatic or indulgent. It was an invitation. Maybe this wasn't about taking revenge. Maybe it was about reclaiming the story. After lunch, I sat at my desk and opened my email. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before typing the subject line, "Let's talk about family gaslighting." The recipient was a friend who hosted a popular local podcast. She'd once told me, "Anytime you want the mic, it's yours." I hesitated for a beat, then clicked attach. I included the screenshots, the video of the toast, the message from my brother. I didn't write a paragraph of explanation. I didn't need to. I let the subject line carry the weight. My finger hovered over send, the cursor blinking. I thought about the bridges everyone warned me not to burn. And then it hit me. Maybe they weren't bridges at all. Maybe they were just ropes, wrapped around my throat, disguised as tradition. The cafe we picked was the kind of place where people came to hide behind foam art and soft jazz. Mark had chosen it. Neutral ground, he said. I'd agreed, mostly out of curiosity, curious to see if he'd show up ready to listen or just to smooth over something he didn't want to face. He sat across from me, blazer folded neatly over the chair beside him. His tie was loosened, like he wanted to project casual honesty, but everything about him felt rehearsed. I stirred my tea slowly, not really tasting it. My fingers were steady. My silence was heavier than anything he said. He finally leaned in. Look, I know things have been hard with your mom, your family, the group chat. I didn't blink. I waited. I've just been thinking, he said carefully. Maybe we press pause. Just a little. Let the dust settle. You mean postpone? He nodded, relieved I said it first. Not cancel, just delay. Give people time to come around. Let things calm. He was trying to sound diplomatic, like a man weighing logic. But I heard what he didn't say. This is messy, and it's making me look bad. You think I'm making this worse? I said quietly. No, Krin, it's not about blame. Isn't it? He exhaled through his nose. I just think we don't need to fight every battle. I set down my spoon. And what exactly is the battle here? That I expected to be treated like a daughter? That I thought my wedding wasn't a threat? Krin, no. Say it. Say you're worried people will judge you for marrying the woman who can't keep her family together. His face changed, tightened just enough to confirm what I already knew. Don't make this about you, he said, echoing a voice I'd heard too many times. It's not the end of the world. No, I said. But it is the end of pretending. I stood up, gathering my bag. He started to reach out, then hesitated. He knew better than to follow. I walked out, the bell above the door chiming softly behind me. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, replaying every conversation with him over the past 6 months. I saw it differently now. The deflections, the careful avoidance whenever my family came up. The way he'd say, let it go, like he wasn't asking me to be patient, but to be quiet. And then, as if summoned by fate, my phone buzzed with a text from Lily, a friend who happened to work in the same firm as Mark. Can I call you real quick? Something weird came up. I called her immediately. Your mom called Mark, she said. A few days ago. Said you were emotionally unstable. That you were under stress and probably not thinking clearly. I felt like the air was being pulled from my lungs, but I kept my voice steady. Did she really say that? Word for word. She made it sound like you were spiraling. That maybe postponing the wedding would give you time to regain balance. Did Mark push back? Lily hesitated. He didn't agree, but he didn't disagree either. He just listened. Thanks for telling me, I said. My voice was even. My chest burned. She paused. You okay? Not yet, I said. But I will be. The next morning, I invited Mark to my apartment. No cafe this time, no neutral ground. He arrived with that same careful energy, like he was prepping for a performance review. I didn't waste time. Did my mother call you? He didn't lie. Yes. Did she tell you I was unstable? He nodded. She said you were under pressure, that you might not be seeing things clearly. And did you believe her? His pause was too long. I didn't want to judge, but you did. Krin, she's your mother. Of course I thought maybe there was... I raised a hand. She planted doubt. You watered it. He stepped back slightly. I was trying to help you slow down, to protect you. No, I said. You were protecting yourself, from discomfort, from choosing a side. He tried again. You can't just walk away from people who love you. That's where you're wrong, I said. Because if they loved me, this wouldn't be conditional. I watched his face collapse into silence. That silence spoke louder than any defense he could have given. I walked to the door and opened it. He hesitated. So that's it? No, I said. That's the beginning. He left without another word, and I didn't look back. That night, I returned to my desk. The wedding binder was still there, tabs labeled with colors, menus, playlists, dreams. I opened it, ripped out the first 10 pages, and tossed them into the bin. Then I grabbed a marker and scrawled across the cover. Revised. This time, I choose me. It was a slow evening, the kind where the sky bleeds orange into gray, and everything feels like it's holding its breath. I was home, curled up on the couch in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, hoping the silence would help me breathe through everything. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from Tanya, a friend from high school who I hadn't spoken to in years. The text read, "Saw this. Thought you should too." It was a YouTube link. I clicked. The video was a sleek montage. Music swelled, transitions faded smoothly, and the screen opened with gold script. Erin's 30th, a legacy in motion. I knew what I was about to watch. Still, I couldn't pull my eyes away. Smiling faces, slow-motion hugs, my brother laughing as he cut into his cake, Mom standing beside him, her hand on his shoulder like she was presenting a trophy, Dad clinking a glass of champagne, cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Even the kids, the ones who barely knew Erin, holding signs that read, "The heart of the family." And me? Not a single frame. The part that gutted me wasn't just the exclusion. It was the soundtrack playing under Mom's voiceover. "We've always been proud of the way we raised him," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "Family first, always." I hit pause. "Family first, unless you're me," I muttered aloud. I didn't cry. That stage was gone. What filled me now wasn't sorrow. It was cold clarity. I had been removed not by accident, not by neglect, but with precision. I played the video again. Slower. I noticed how expertly the footage had been spliced. Old family clips woven in. Christmases. Birthdays. Graduations. All the big moments. And in every one of them, I was cropped out. Or conveniently turned away. One in particular stopped me. My 8th birthday. Balloons, backyard, pink dress. I remembered it like it was yesterday. But in the video, just as I step into the frame with a sparkler in hand, the camera pans abruptly to Erin tossing a football. They weren't forgetting me, they were deleting me. I opened a new document on my laptop and began timestamping every omission. It wasn't for show. It wasn't to confront anyone. It was for the record. If one day someone asked me what happened, I wanted to hand them evidence, not just pain. That kind of intentional silence. It's violence. 3 days later, I met with Mrs. Callahan. She was an old friend of my late grandmother, gritty, no nonsense, and one of the last people in the church who still called me by my full name. We sat in the back booth of a diner she liked. She always ordered the same thing: tuna melt, no pickles, extra mustard. She looked me over like I was a puzzle she hadn't finished solving yet. "You look tired, Ilana," she said after taking a sip of her iced tea. "I've been tired for a while." "Just didn't know what to call it." She nodded slowly. "You're dealing with a kind of grief most folks don't understand. It's hard when your losses are still breathing." I stirred my coffee, unsure how to respond. Then she leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I need to tell you something. I probably should have years ago." I looked up. "Your mother," she said carefully. "She's always been sensitive to attention, especially when it wasn't directed at her." "What do you mean?" "Even as a teenager, if someone at church complimented you, said you were bright or poised, Justice would change the subject. She'd steer the conversation back to Erin, or worse, critique your tone or posture." I stared at her, stunned. "You reminded her," she said, "of who she wanted to be before life made her bitter." I couldn't find my voice. The silence between us stretched long enough for the waitress to refill our waters and walk away. "She never liked mirrors, Ilana," Mrs. Callahan added. "And you? You've always been one." The realization hit me harder than any insult ever had. This wasn't just about family politics. It wasn't about a wedding. It wasn't about dates on a calendar. It was about me, my presence, my independence, my refusal to shrink. That night, I went home and opened my laptop. The folder I'd been building, screenshots, video clips, voice notes, I renamed it, erased and reclaimed. Then I pulled a small external hard drive from my drawer and plugged it in. I created a duplicate, encrypted it, and labeled it in Sharpie for my daughter someday. I didn't know if I'd ever have one, but if I did, I wanted her to know something I hadn't learned until it nearly broke me. Silence isn't always passive. Sometimes it's the loudest way someone can say, "You don't belong here," and sometimes the only way to answer back is to write yourself in. The morning sun spilled through the high windows of the community art studio, casting long golden rectangles across the cement floor. I stood at the center of the room, a clipboard in one hand and my phone in the other, checking off tasks and timelines. The space smelled faintly of acrylic paint and lemon cleaner, oddly comforting, like something lived in but cared for. It wasn't the glamorous venue I'd once imagined, but it felt honest. It felt mine. This place held years of memories. I'd taught after-school workshops here when I was fresh out of college, hoping to blend therapy with creativity. I'd swept these very floors, laughed with teens over spilled paint, stayed late helping one of them finish a mural for a scholarship submission. Now this space would hold something entirely new, my ceremony, on my terms, without compromise or illusion. The flowers were already arriving, wild arrangements in recycled jars. Friends buzzed around, helping me hang strings of lights along the exposed beams. Music equipment was being tested in the corner. I moved through it all like someone who had just come back from a war and decided she was going to build peace from the ruins herself. Sometimes the smallest spaces hold the loudest truths, I muttered under my breath while folding linen napkins. I felt calm, not numb, truly, finally calm, until the knock came. One of the volunteers answered the door and called out, "Delivery for Krin." I walked over, heart already starting to tighten. The man standing there wheeled in a tall white box, professionally sealed. "Cake delivery for Miss Verdansky." I stared at it. "I didn't order a cake," I said. He checked his tablet. "It's paid for. Signature required." I signed slowly, staring at the name listed under the order. Justice K. My pulse spiked. "Would you like me to open it for you?" the man asked, polite but clearly sensing tension. "No thanks," I said, voice flat. He wheeled it inside, set it near the gift table, then left. I approached the box like it might explode. Lifting the lid, I saw it. 3 tiers, blue frosting, gold lettering piped neatly along the side. "Happy birthday, son. Family always first." Taped to the base was a note. "Hope you're enjoying your little show." I felt the heat rise in my neck. A group of guests nearby laughed over something unrelated, then glanced over. One of them caught sight of the cake and furrowed her brow. "Oh, was this planned?" she asked gently. I forced a smile so tight it hurt. "Just a surprise from the family." She chuckled awkwardly and turned away. I turned to one of the volunteers and whispered, "Can you move this to the back room? Please don't let anyone else see it." He nodded, understanding more than I had words for. I walked to the tiny kitchenette at the back of the studio and sat down on a stool. You can't reason with someone who thinks your boundaries are a game. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just stared at my hands. The woman who raised me sent a message designed not to derail my plans, but to mock their very existence. Her power wasn't in saying no. It was in trying to turn my yes into a joke. But I wasn't a punchline. Later that evening, I logged into the email account I used for wedding coordination. I was checking the final playlist when I noticed an unread message in the planner's forwarded folder. Subject: timeline flexibility. I opened it, expecting logistics. Instead, I saw it, an email from Justice to my wedding planner, dated 3 weeks ago. "Just keep calm, she'll panic and cancel. She always does." It sat there like a bullet. No emotion, just strategy. I scrolled down. My planner had replied with a neutral, Understood. Thank you. It wasn't just sabotage. It was a bet placed against my strength. Flashbacks hit me like waves, moments when I'd second-guessed myself, questioned my instincts, retreated just enough to keep the peace. Every time she planted doubt, I'd been the one to water it. No more. I took a screenshot of the email thread, backed it up to my external drive, and forwarded it to my personal inbox labeled Receipts. This wasn't about revenge. It was self-defense. She'd made sure to define me by my inability to finish, to follow through. She thought this would be another case of me crumbling. I wasn't going to give her that story. I opened my laptop's desktop, found the folder labeled Wedding Original Vision, and deleted it. In its place, I saved the image of the cake and the email thread under a new folder name, Witness. Because now, someone needed to be watching, even if it was just me. I arrived at the venue 2 hours before the ceremony. The lights were already warm inside the studio, casting a soft hue on the canvases that lined the back wall. Everything was where it needed to be. The modest floral arrangements, the folding chairs arranged in a crescent, the strings of fairy lights hung between beams. It was small, but deliberate, intimate, authentic, and mostly empty. Only a handful of guests had shown up. My closest friends, a couple of distant relatives I hadn't spoken to since high school, and a former co-worker who drove 4 hours just to be there. There were more empty chairs than filled ones, but no matter how vacant the room looked, I felt full, not from pride, from peace. As I stood by the dressing mirror adjusting my bracelet, my best friend Kara leaned in close behind me. "You still sure about the live stream?" she asked softly. I met her eyes in the reflection. "They wanted to silence me," I said. "This is how I make sure they can't." She nodded. "Then let them hear every word." At 5 o'clock sharp, I walked down the aisle, alone. There was no father beside me, no grand orchestral swell, just the quiet echo of my heels against the polished floor and the soft sniffles from Kara in the front row. I didn't need to look behind me. I could feel the absence like cold wind at my back. "They thought my story would end in shame," I whispered internally. "But I came here to write a new one." The ceremony was brief. My officiant, a retired professor who had always treated me more like a daughter than my own parents had, spoke with a gentleness that wrapped around the room like a quilt. I said my vows to myself, not to a partner, but to the life I was choosing, one where I wasn't waiting to be picked. After the last applause faded, the reception began. It was modest: finger foods, acoustic covers from a friend's band, laughter where there used to be tension. I stood near the front of the room holding the mic, knowing everyone expected a thank you speech. Instead, I pressed a button on a small remote. Behind me, the projector screen flickered to life. The slideshow began as expected: pictures from childhood, clips from the studio prep, images of floral arrangements and invitation designs. Then it shifted. A photo of the birthday cake Justice sent, its garish blue icing glaring against the white background, a screenshot of the deleted comments under her Facebook post, an email, Justice's message to my wedding planner, time-stamped weeks before. "Just keep calm. She'll panic and cancel. She always does." There was an audible shift in the room. Some guests looked away. A few murmured. One man I didn't recognize stood up, clearly uncomfortable. But I didn't stop. "I was told this day didn't matter," I began, my voice even. "I was told I'd fall apart, that I was too much, too dramatic, too selfish." But here's the truth. I turned slightly, scanning the room with dry eyes. I built this. Every chair, every flower, every second of this day was stitched together by my hands because no one else showed up to do it with me. And I am not ashamed. The room was quiet, except for the occasional buzz of the live stream notification pinging on my phone. Kara stood, tears streaming down her face. The band member set down her guitar and clapped slowly. One by one, others joined her. The live stream continued to run, broadcasting every image, every word, every receipt. Within minutes, the comments started flooding in. "You're brave. Sending love from Oregon. This is the most powerful thing I've ever seen." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I just stood, rooted in a space I carved out of rejection and made into something sacred. Later that night, after most of the guests had left and only a few lingered to help clean up, I sat in the back corner scrolling through the comments on the stream. People I hadn't spoken to in years were tagging me. A girl I went to high school with messaged, "I wish I'd had the guts to do what you did." Even my former guidance counselor emailed me. "You always had a light they couldn't dim," she wrote. "I see it now more than ever." Online, the video had started to take off. A few small media accounts reposted it. Hashtags appeared. Hashtag bride that fought back. Hashtag family gaslighting. And then came the message that caught me completely off guard. A comment under the video. "I didn't know. I'm sorry." It was from my cousin Claire, the same one who sat silently at Aaron's party while I was being wiped from the family album. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Somewhere between the footage and the silence, she'd heard what needed to be heard. When I finally clicked the end stream button, my hands shook. Not from fear, from the sheer force of release. This was never about who showed up. It was about who stood by the truth when the curtain dropped. Once the last chair was folded and the final tray of cupcakes packed away, I remained behind, walking slowly through the quiet studio. The lights now cast long shadows across the floor. I picked up a single white rose from the nearest table and twirled it between my fingers. It was the flower I chose to represent my grandmother, the one person I'd always felt seen by. "Maybe family isn't who sits beside you," I whispered. "Maybe it's who fights for your space when you're not there." And I knew, even in victory, I wasn't done counting the cost. I woke up still in my dress. My back ached from the couch cushion beneath me. My hair was a mess of pins and tangled curls, and the lights from the night before still glowed dimly from across the studio space. I blinked against the morning sun, bleeding through the slats of the blinds. Then I turned over and reached for my phone. 68 unread messages, 22 missed calls, 143 social media notifications. But I wasn't anxious. I didn't panic. I scrolled, sip by sip, through each vibration and alert with the stillness of someone who had already made peace with the storm. Because I wasn't waiting for it to pass. I had been the one to summon it. You don't need to wait for a storm to pass when you realize you were the one raining truth all along. The quote danced in my head as I opened the first message. It was from a number I didn't recognize at first. "Krin, I saw the video. You were brave. I'm sorry I never asked before. I should have." We all should have. The name below it made my heart still. Mrs. Halverson, the pastor's wife. A woman who had always smiled at me politely, but never stepped past that. She went on. Justice held this image of a perfect family for years. She quoted scripture, spoke on panels about forgiveness and unity, but no one saw the fractures until you held the mirror. People are talking. People are asking questions. Another message pinged through, this time from someone I vaguely remembered from church. She said you were troubled, unstable, but after watching that live stream, it was like seeing you breathe for the first time. Thank you. By noon, I had lost count of the number of women, some acquaintances, others strangers, who had messaged to say, "Me too." Not all had mothers like Justice, but all had someone in their lives who used silence like a sword. But then came the message that stopped me mid-scroll. Justice has been asked to step down from the family panel, and the PTA. Too many complaints. A small gasp escaped me, not because I wanted that, but because I never expected it to actually happen. Justice wasn't invincible anymore. Her image, flawless, God-fearing, maternal, was cracking under the weight of facts. Photos of the birthday cake, the deleted comments, the email, the video footage, the chairs, the silence. One woman even posted, We didn't know she could be that cruel. I sat at my kitchen table, staring out the window. I didn't feel triumph. I felt stillness. I wasn't trying to destroy her, I whispered to no one. But truth always bulldozes what can't stand on its own. I scrolled again, stopping at a message from a woman named Ellen. She was one of my mom's church friends, the kind who always wore pearls to potlucks and never missed a photo opportunity. Sorry things had to get messy, she wrote, but family is still family. I read it 3 times before deleting it. That was the problem. People like Ellen clung to the word family like it was a shield, as if it excused everything. That afternoon, a few texts came in from my mother's sisters. Sorry we missed the wedding. We love you, Krin. Please remember that. There's a lot going on. It's complicated. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Instagram and typed in each of their handles. All 3 had posted from the birthday party. Laughing, clinking glasses, standing beside the cake with its golden letters. Family always first. Each photo was posted within minutes of my vows. They weren't sorry. They were caught. I sat back in my chair, letting the feeling wash over me. It wasn't rage anymore. It was crystal clarity. Regret is cheap when it costs you nothing. I opened a message draft to Aunt Melissa, typing, "You had a choice. I've made mine too." Then I deleted it. Not out of fear, out of resolve. Instead, I opened my contacts list and began removing names. Melissa, gone. Janice, gone. Cynthia, gone. It wasn't an act of war. It was a boundary, firm and overdue. That night, I lit a candle, not for memory, but for clarity. I opened my journal and turned to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote, "People who showed up." And slowly, I began writing names. Kara, my best friend who held my hand through the whole thing. Professor Leland, who officiated when no one else would. Tyra, my old college roommate who'd flown in last minute. I paused, then added another. Claire, my cousin who I hadn't spoken to in years but had shared a post that morning. She had written, "To my cousin Krin, you stood up when everyone expected you to sit down. I see you, I believe you, and I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner." I circled her name. I sat back and exhaled. I was done looking for apologies. Now I was looking for allies. It was one of those quiet mornings that almost felt rehearsed, sky overcast but soft, the kind of light that makes you want to believe in new beginnings. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, clutching a mug of coffee like it could give me answers. The house was still, filled only with the lingering scent of gardenia from yesterday's bouquet. I had deleted most of the apps off my phone after the live stream, but texts and emails still found their way through. I'd stopped reading the messages from my mother's circle. Each one felt like it carried an agenda wrapped in condolence. Then, a knock. 3 short raps on the front door. I peered through the peephole. It was Mark. He held a small bouquet of lilies, my favorite, which meant he still remembered, but the stiffness in his shoulders told me this wasn't about romance. This was about redemption. I opened the door without speaking. He gave me a weak smile. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, letting him in. Not because I wanted to fix anything, but because closure deserves a front row seat. We sat across from each other at the table, a silence between us that felt almost respectful. "I should have stood by you," he began. "I know that now." I waited. I watched the video, every second of it. I didn't expect to feel so ashamed. I thought I was doing the safe thing, the mature thing. But watching you speak, knowing I let you walk into that room alone. He stopped, exhaled hard. That wasn't maturity. That was fear. I didn't nod. I didn't soften. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the engagement ring, the same one I had worn months ago with quiet hope. "If you're still willing," "I am. Fully. No hesitations. No conditions." The air between us shifted, not with tension, but with the weight of a choice. I looked at him, not the version I imagined he'd be, but the man he was now. Raw, remorseful, too late. "You had your moment," I said quietly. "This is mine now." He blinked, clearly trying to find words that wouldn't sound like begging. "Trust doesn't always break loudly," I continued. "Sometimes it just stops being a place you want to stand." His shoulders slumped. "So that's it?" It was it, the second you hesitated. We didn't yell, we didn't cry. We just sat for a minute longer in that room that had once held plans, and now just held truth. He left without another word, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel a need to follow. That evening, while sorting through the wedding folder my aunt had handed me weeks ago, I found a sealed envelope tucked behind a stack of RSVP cards. It was from my mother. The handwriting was unmistakable, elegant, distant. Inside was a bridal voucher, a $150 gift certificate to a clearance outlet that sold discontinued gowns and knockoff shoes. The kind of place you sent a distant cousin you barely liked, not your only daughter. I stared at it for a long while, not sure whether to laugh or scream, but then something tugged at me, curiosity. I logged onto Aaron's wedding registry. It was still public. There, in neat bullets and gleaming links, sat a list of fully purchased items. A premium honeymoon package, custom suits, a 5-figure donation for their down payment fund. All gifts marked from Mom and Dad. "They gave him the world," I muttered. "I got clearance lace." I didn't feel rage, not anymore. I took the voucher, scanned it, and uploaded it into the same folder I had kept everything else. I named the file, "The Cost of Being Her Daughter." Then I typed a note beneath it. Sometimes you learn the most about people not by what they say, but by what they're willing to give. Later that night, I sat at my desk and opened a blank spreadsheet. I titled it, Emotional Inventory. I created 2 columns. On the left, what I lost. On the right, what I gained. Under lost, I typed, parents. Illusion of fairness. The version of love I used to chase. Time I won't get back. Old dreams. Under gained, I wrote, clarity, my voice, real love, for myself, proof, peace. I closed the laptop, leaned back in the chair, and whispered aloud to no one in particular. The debt was emotional, but I'm finally collecting what I was owed. 3 days after the wedding, I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. The screen lit up with a Facebook notification. "You've been tagged in a post by Serena Valdez." It took me a second to place the name. Serena, my mother's niece. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. I wiped my mouth, picked up the phone, and tapped. The video started with a shot of Serena sitting cross-legged on her couch, hair pulled into a loose braid, no makeup, just a tired softness in her expression. Her voice cracked at the start. "I wasn't planning on saying anything," she began. "But after watching Krin's wedding livestream, I couldn't stay silent anymore." My heart thudded. I slid down onto the edge of the bathtub, toothbrush still in hand. "I was erased first," she said, her eyes glinting with something deeper than sadness. Krin just had the courage to say it out loud. The caption under the video read, "Family isn't always the people who raise you. Sometimes it's the people who see you." By the end of the 6-minute video, I was crying, not because I was broken, but because someone had finally mirrored what I'd been feeling for years. She had made it through the same storm, and somehow, in her reflection, I felt whole. Later that afternoon, I messaged her. She replied immediately, "I've been hoping you'd reach out." 2 days later, we met at a small coffee shop near downtown. She looked the same, but older, wiser, in a way that made you pay attention. We hugged, sat, and started talking like time hadn't skipped a beat. "I always thought it was me," I said, swirling the foam in my latte. "That's what they do," she nodded. "Isolate you, make you feel like the crazy one." Serena told me how she once tried to question justice over a Thanksgiving seating chart of all things. She rearranged the entire table to move me next to the kitchen door, she said with a dry laugh. When I asked why, she said, "You're used to being in the background anyway." I clenched my jaw. She called me unstable, Serena added. Told the family I was a problem. Suddenly, no more invites, no more calls, just silence. I felt the chill of recognition creep in. Same script, different actress. She watched your live stream, Serena continued, and I watched her face change. I saw something break. She wasn't embarrassed. She was afraid. I let that hang in the air for a moment. You didn't just speak for yourself, she said quietly. You spoke for a line of us. We sat in silence, letting that settle between us like a long exhale. Maybe the legacy I carried wasn't what I inherited, but what I had the power to end. Before we left, we took a photo together outside the coffee shop. No filters, no edits, just two women who had once been invisible. I posted it later with a caption that read, "The daughters who refused to disappear," and it went viral. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. I started getting messages from women I hadn't spoken to in years, colleagues, classmates, even one of my old high school teachers. We started meeting once a month, first for brunch, then hikes, later just to sit and talk. No rules, no facades, just women showing up for each other. I stopped waiting for my family to call. I started answering the ones who already had. At home, I printed out my guest list of love, names of those who had stood by me. I framed it and hung it in the hallway across from my bedroom door. One frame stayed empty. "For whoever finds the courage next," I wrote beneath it. Not long after, I found myself holding a pen and a sheet of paper late into the night. The words came without effort, like they'd been waiting. Dear Mom, it wasn't angry, it wasn't even bitter, it was just true. I wrote everything I'd once wanted her to know. Everything I'd screamed in my head but never dared say aloud. I folded the letter neatly, placed it in a small wooden box, and labeled it unsent but not unspoken. Because some words don't need to be heard to matter. You don't need to be heard by those who refuse to listen, I whispered to myself, sealing the lid. Sometimes, you just need to speak for yourself. I tucked the box onto the shelf beside my journal and turned off the light. I had buried the girl they tried to erase. Now, I was writing her next chapter. The gallery smelled faintly of varnished wood and dried lavender. The small exhibit had only been open a week, yet people came, curious, hushed, reverent. I stood off to the side as visitors moved from frame to frame, each pausing longer than the last. One photo stopped nearly everyone in their tracks. It was me, standing alone at the altar in the community art studio. No veil, no bouquet, just me in a sleek white jumpsuit, eyes forward, spine straight, hands open at my sides, calm, centered. The title plaque beneath it read, "Not the daughter you expected, but the woman I chose to be." Some visitors nodded as they passed. Others left notes in the comment box by the door. A woman in her 60s with salt and pepper hair and a cane whispered to me, "I didn't know I needed that until you said it." Her eyes were glassy, her voice unwavering. I smiled, not because I needed to, but because I felt it. There's a difference. Some victories don't roar, some just stop bleeding. Back home, I opened the last sealed box from the wedding. It had been tucked away behind a stack of art supplies and old college notebooks. Inside was the photo, my favorite, the one where I stood at the front of the room, chin lifted, surrounded by light and empty chairs. I had taken it myself after everyone left. A timer, a tripod, one quiet act of permanence. I placed it in a large wooden frame I'd bought the day after the gallery opened. It was warm oak, thick and hand-carved. Under the photo, on the cream-colored matting, I taped a card with black serif font that read, "I didn't need you to believe in me, I just needed me." Then I drove. The roads felt smaller than I remembered, the neighborhood familiar but distant. I hadn't returned here in months, not since the fallout, not since I drew a line in the sand and dared anyone to step over it. My parents' house looked the same, that white fence my father always painted in May, the porch swing that creaked even when no one sat in it, the blinds in the living room half drawn, as if the house, too, was avoiding eye contact. I parked, walked to the front step, and rang the bell. Justice opened the door. She didn't speak. I didn't wait for her to. I set the frame gently on the doormat. "This," I said, gesturing to the photo, "is what your silence built. I wanted you to see it." She opened her mouth. I raised a hand. "I'm not here for closure," I added. "I'm here to close this chapter." And I turned and walked away. There was no yelling, no grand scene, just the sound of my heels on the concrete and the wind moving through the trees like an old song. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconnection. It means I'm not carrying this anymore. The following week, I walked into the county clerk's office. The woman at the counter asked for my name. "Alana May," I said. "And last name?" I smiled. "Summers, Somers. It was my grandmother's maiden name. She'd passed before I was old enough to remember the stories, but I carried her laughter in mine. This name wasn't just a departure, it was a homecoming. Changing your name doesn't erase history, but it does let you stop bleeding for someone else's legacy. When I got home, there was an envelope in the mailbox. No return address, just my name, handwritten. Inside, a single sheet of lined paper. I watched the video. I know now. I'm sorry. No name. But I recognized the handwriting. My brother's. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I placed the note in the wooden box under my bed, labeled "Things I Won't Carry." Some apologies are too late, and some pain has already made other plans. I spent the next day packing the final pieces of my wedding dreams, the candles, leftover programs, glass votives. I delivered them to a local shelter for single mothers. "If someone else can start their story with my fragments," I told the receptionist, "let it be beautiful." Then I went home and opened a blank document. Title: The Daughter Who Stayed. The first line: "They tried to write me out, so I wrote myself in." Later that evening, I stood in my living room, bathed in the soft gold light of sunset. The framed photo hung above the mantel now. I looked at it, the woman in white, alone but unshaken, and I heard her, the younger version of me, the one who used to draw family portraits with missing faces. "You were never too much," she said in my mind. "They were too little to hold you." I picked up my keys, locked the front door behind me, and stepped into the evening, not running from anything, just finally walking toward everything else. Not every goodbye is sad. Some are just necessary.